Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The crystal chandelier above the table cast perfect light across the white tablecloth, making the envelope seem to glow as it slid across the surface toward me. I watched it move, my hands folded calmly in my lap, my face revealing nothing. Inside that envelope was $50,000 in cash. Outside this restaurant, I held $10 million worth of preferred shares in the company owned by the man sitting across from me. But Leon Price did not know that. His wife, Denise, did not know it either. And my husband, Malcolm, sitting beside me in his expensive navy suit, definitely had no idea. "Ariana," Leon said, using the tone wealthy men adopt when they are convinced they are being generous. "You seem like a sensible woman. We are not trying to be cruel here. We are trying to be practical." I let my eyes drift from the envelope to his face. Leon Price was 62, with carefully groomed gray hair and the kind of confidence that grows in someone who has rarely been told no. His company, Price Innovations, had been staggering toward disaster before my investment 3 years earlier. I had watched the stock prices sink, seen the mismanagement, and recognized the potential buried under his ego. When I bought in anonymously through my holding company, I had saved his legacy without him ever knowing. "Practical," I repeated softly, as if I were tasting the word for the first time. Denise leaned forward. She wore a deep wine-colored dress that likely cost more than most people's rent. A wide diamond necklace flashed at her throat every time she moved. "Dear, you have to understand," Denise said. "Malcolm has a certain position to maintain. His future in the company depends on the right kind of marriage, the right kind of wife." I glanced at Malcolm. He would not meet my eyes. He stared at his wine glass instead, his jaw tight. 3 years of marriage, and this was the moment I had been waiting for. Not hoping for, but expecting. I knew this dinner would expose something. I just had not expected them to be so brazen about it. "The right kind of wife," I said slowly. "You mean someone with money. Someone from the right background." Denise corrected, though we both knew she meant the same thing. "Someone who understands our world. Someone who can help Malcolm advance, not hold him back." I picked up my water glass and took a deliberate sip. The restaurant hummed around us with quiet conversations and the faint clink of cutlery. Other well-dressed families were having their perfect dinners, playing their perfect little games. "Malcolm," I asked quietly, "you are going to let them do this?" He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that had been growing there for 6 months, shame or resentment or both. "Ariana, maybe we should just hear them out," he said. "Hear them out?" I asked, as if this is a reasonable business proposal and not your parents offering me money to divorce you. Leon cleared his throat. "We know you come from humble beginnings," he said. "Your mother raised you alone. You work at that little nonprofit. You wear thrift store clothes." His eyes traveled over my simple green dress, the one I had chosen very carefully for this dinner. "There is no shame in that, but Malcolm needs someone who can match his ambitions." I could have told him that the little nonprofit was actually a community investment fund I had founded, one that had helped launch 20 small businesses in underserved neighborhoods. I could have told him that my thrift store clothes were a choice, not a necessity. I could have told him that I had more money in my personal portfolio than Malcolm would ever see in his life. I did not. "How much is in the envelope?" I asked instead. Denise's shoulders relaxed in obvious relief. She believed I was considering their offer. $50,000, she said. "Enough to start over somewhere new. Enough to find someone more suitable to your background." "And if I take it?" I asked. Leon pulled another envelope from his briefcase and placed it beside the first, his expression almost fatherly. "You sign the divorce papers," he said. "Clean break. You walk away. Malcolm moves forward with his life. Everyone avoids scandal." I looked at the thick envelope again. They thought that was all it would take to buy me. They thought I was so desperate, so poor, so small, that I would take their money and disappear. They had no idea that I held the power to unseat him inside his own company. "Malcolm," I said one more time, "this is really what you want." He shifted in his seat. "Ariana, you have to admit we are from different worlds," he said. "Maybe my parents have a point. Maybe we rushed into this. You would be better off with someone from your own level." Your own level. The phrase dangled between us like a bad smell. I remembered the tiny coffee shop where we had met 3 years earlier, the way he had seemed humble and charming. He said he loved that I was not materialistic, that he was tired of women who only wanted him for his family's money. He told me he wanted something real. I had wanted to believe him so badly that I ignored the quiet warnings in the back of my mind. 2 previous relationships had ended the moment men glimpsed my net worth. One boyfriend had turned every conversation into a shopping list. Another had proposed while secretly researching how to access a wife's bank accounts. I decided to try something different with Malcolm. I hid everything. I lived simply. I let him think I was just another woman working long hours for a nonprofit salary. For a while, it was almost peaceful. Then the comments started about my clothes, my job, my lack of connections. Then 6 months ago, I discovered the affair. Her name was Serena from his office. She wore tailored suits and drove a luxury sedan. She fit seamlessly into the world Malcolm wanted: galas, charity boards, social pages. I had not confronted him when I found out. Instead, I hired a private investigator named Calvin Ross, gathered receipts, photos, and timestamps, and built my case with the same precision I used to build my investments. When Malcolm told me his parents wanted to get to know me better, over dinner, I knew exactly what was coming. "May I have a moment to think?" I asked now, letting my voice sound small and certain. The role they expected. Denise smiled indulgently. "Of course, dear. Take your time." I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy, dense with their contempt. Inside was $50,000 of hush money and arrogance. I opened it, looked down at the neat stacks of $100 bills, then closed it again gently and laid it back on the table. Next, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I opened my banking application, the personal account, not the holding company, and let the numbers appear. The balance glowed on the screen: $2,400,000. Liquid cash. Not counting real estate. Not counting the $10 million worth of preferred stock in Price Innovations sitting quietly under Harper Holdings, my shell company. I turned the phone around and slid it across the table until it rested next to the envelope. "I do not need your money," I said. Leon's face drained of color. Denise's mouth opened and closed without sound. Malcolm snatched the phone and stared at the screen. "What is this?" he whispered. "Is this real?" "Very real," I said. "Did you really think I worked at a nonprofit because I could not do anything else? I worked there because I believe in it. I own it, just like I own several other things you do not know about." "You have been lying to me," Malcolm said, his voice rising. "This whole time you have been lying." I almost laughed. The man who had been sneaking into hotel rooms with his coworker for 6 months was accusing me of dishonesty. "I chose not to share everything about myself," I said. "Just like you chose not to share everything about Serena." His face went paper white. Denise looked confused. Leon narrowed his eyes. "Who is Serena?" Denise asked. "His girlfriend," I replied calmly. "They have been together since June. She works in his department. They usually meet at the Riverside Plaza Hotel on Thursday afternoons. Room 411, according to the investigator's report." The table went silent. Around us, waiters moved smoothly between tables. No one else noticed the way Malcolm's world was cracking at the seams. He shoved back his chair so violently it scraped the floor. "You are making this up," he snapped. "You are trying to embarrass me because you are ashamed about this dinner." "Am I?" I asked quietly. I reached into my purse again and removed a slim folder. Inside were printed photos and screenshots Calvin had collected. Malcolm and Serena entering the hotel, hands brushing. Malcolm and Serena at an upscale restaurant across town. Text message threads. I spread them on the table like a set of cards. Denise's hand trembled as she picked up a photo. Leon's complexion went from pale to furious red. "Malcolm," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Tell me this is not what it looks like." Malcolm stared at the evidence and had no words. I stood up, smoothing the inexpensive green dress over my hips. "I left the cash envelope where it's Saturday. Keep your money," I told them. "You are going to need it." I picked up my phone and my folder and slung my purse over my shoulder. "My attorney will be in touch about the divorce. And Leon," I added, meeting his eyes directly, "you may want to think twice before underestimating people based on what you think they do not have. You never know who you are actually talking to." I walked out of that restaurant with my head high. Behind me, I left the Prices with their ruined dinner, their scattered photographs, and an envelope of cash that suddenly seemed very small. They had no idea that the anonymous investor, who owned $10 million worth of their company's stock, was about to call a special board meeting. They had no idea that the woman they tried to pay to disappear was the same woman whose advice had saved their company from collapse. 3 years earlier, my life had looked very different. I had been sitting in a small coffee shop in downtown Chicago, reading financial reports on my laptop. I was 26 years old and had just crossed the $2 million mark in my net worth through a series of smart tech and real estate investments. My mother, Claudia Walker, had died the year before, and I was still learning how to walk through the world without her voice on the phone. Claudia had started with nothing. She grew up in a cramped apartment with a grandmother who worked 2 jobs. She promised herself she would never be trapped by money the way her family had been. Claudia put herself through community college, then a state university, working nights in diners and weekends in retail stores. By the time I was born, she was a financial advisor at a small firm on the south side of Chicago. She raised me alone after my father left when I was 2. I barely remember him, just a shadow of a man who smelled like cheap whiskey and made my mother's shoulders tighten. When he disappeared, he left us with past due bills and a car that barely ran. Claudia paid everything off within 2 years. Money is freedom, she told me constantly. It is not about being rich to show off. It is about having choices. When I was 8, she taught me about compound interest using a glass jar of coins and a notebook. At 10, she had me reading the business section with her and explaining why certain companies were making the news. At 12, she showed me how rental properties worked. At 14, I had my own brokerage account funded by babysitting and summer jobs. Do not brag about this, she warned. People treat you differently when they know you have money. Some will try to use you. Some will resent you. Very few will see you clearly. When I was 23, Claudia died of cancer. It was fast, ruthless, and unfair. She left me $500,000 in life insurance and investments, along with a worn envelope labeled, "Read this after the funeral." Inside was a letter in her careful handwriting. Do not spend this on things, she wrote. Invest it. Be patient. Be smart. Make it work for you. And when you fall in love, make sure that person loves you before they know what you have. You deserve real love, not love bought and paid for. I followed every word. I invested in carefully researched companies, in small apartment buildings, in businesses that made sense on paper and in reality. In 2 years, I doubled her legacy. In 5, I made my first $1 million. By the time I sat in that coffee shop in Chicago, I had turned her teachings into something substantial. My first serious boyfriend, Jared, had been charming and funny. Everything was fine until he saw a statement I forgot on the kitchen counter. Suddenly, he became obsessed with where we could vacation, what cars we could buy, what he deserved as my partner. When I refused to finance his half-baked restaurant idea, he called me selfish and walked out. The second, Omar, was more subtle. He proposed after 6 months. While he slept, I found his search history. How to access a wife's bank accounts, community property rules, asset division and divorce. When I confronted him, he did not even pretend to be ashamed. After Omar, I promised myself I would never again be careless with what Claudia left me. That promise is why, when Malcolm walked into the coffee shop with his tie loosened and his laptop under his arm, I snapped my computer shut before he could see the stock charts. He made a joke about how the market was trying to give everyone a heart attack. We started talking. He was handsome, quick-witted, and surprisingly self-deprecating for a man from a wealthy family. My father keeps pushing me to join the family business, he told me, stirring his coffee. I want to prove I can stand on my own first. I do not want people thinking I am just coasting on his name. I liked that answer. It sounded like independence. It sounded like someone who understood work. We dated for 6 months. During that time, I never lied about who I was, but I did not volunteer everything either. I let him see the modest apartment I rented, not the deed to the building in my desk. I let him believe my job at the nonprofit was my main income rather than a passion project I had created. I wore simple clothes, rarely any jewelry beyond the small gold studs from my mother. He proposed in a quiet park on a windy afternoon with a thoughtful speech about wanting a partner who valued real things instead of status. I said yes, ignoring the whisper of doubt that asked why I was agreeing without telling him the full truth. Our wedding was small. My side of the aisle was filled with coworkers, a few childhood friends, and Claudia's former colleagues. His side was filled with lawyers, executives, and women in gowns that belonged on magazine covers. His mother's eyes skimmed over my off-the-rack dress. His father asked what my own father did, and when I said I did not know where he was, I watched judgment settle behind Leon's eyes like dust. Malcolm squeezed my hand and told me not to worry. They will come around, he promised. They just need to see how great you are. For a while, during that first year of marriage, I almost believed him. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house on the outskirts of the city, one Malcolm believed we were renting from a private owner. In reality, I had purchased it in cash on the day we signed our marriage license and put the deed in my name alone. Malcolm had a solid position at Price Innovations, his father's software firm. I kept working at my nonprofit, which I had structured as a community investment fund disguised as a charity. We lived comfortably, but not extravagantly. Malcolm seemed content, until he was not. During our second year of marriage, he started coming home later. He talked more about office politics and who was moving into which leadership role. He began to mention his colleagues' spouses. Elliot's wife just chaired a fundraiser that raised $250,000, he would say. It was in all the local business magazines. That is nice, I would answer, even as I saw the comparison in his eyes. Why did I not join more clubs? Why did I not upgrade my wardrobe? Why was I still wasting my talent at a nonprofit? Bit by bit, the simple life he said he loved became a source of embarrassment for him. Around that same time, I started taking a closer look at Price Innovations. On paper, it was a mid-sized tech company that provided software solutions to hospital systems and clinics. In reality, under Leon's leadership, it was a mess. The products were decent, but contracts were poorly structured, and the company was bleeding money on unnecessary projects. Through contacts Claudia had introduced me to years earlier, I obtained deeper financial reports. It did not take long to see the pattern. Poor strategic decisions, wasted opportunities, and a prideful founder unwilling to accept help. I could have walked away and invested elsewhere. Instead, I saw an opportunity. Price Innovations was salvageable if someone with actual financial discipline stepped in. I created a holding company called Harper Holdings and, through a network of attorneys, offered a $10 million investment in exchange for preferred stock and the right to attend major decision-making meetings. Leon accepted almost immediately. The contracts were processed through intermediaries. To him, Harper Holdings was a faceless investment group. To the board, Harper was a mysterious advisor who appeared on a pixelated video feed with voice modulation. For 3 years, I attended Price Innovations board meetings from my office at home, calling in as Harper. Leon hated needing my input, but he could not argue with results. Under my guidance, the company renegotiated bad contracts, streamlined operations, and refocused on profitable products. Within 1 year, the stock stabilized and then began to climb. Within 2, profits returned. Publicly, Leon took full credit. Privately, the board knew the anonymous investor was the one preventing disaster. At home, Malcolm complained about the annoying investor who thinks they run the company because they put in some money. I stirred the pasta and nodded, hiding the smile that threatened to appear. By the time I hired Calvin to investigate Malcolm's Thursday project meetings, I already had my financial defenses in place. My assets were strictly separate, held in accounts he could not access. My attorney, Walter King, had drawn up divorce papers and advised me to keep documenting everything. In this state, infidelity matters, he said. You have more than enough evidence, but a little extra never hurts. My financial advisor, Elaine Porter, adjusted my portfolio to ensure nothing could be mistaken for marital property. I waited. When Malcolm told me his parents wanted a family dinner at an exclusive Italian restaurant downtown, I knew the moment had arrived. The morning after that disastrous dinner, I woke up in the bedroom Malcolm believed we shared equally and reminded myself that the house was mine. Not ours. Mine. I brewed coffee and carried it into the small room I used as an office. He rarely entered. In his mind, it was where I kept my nonprofit paperwork. In reality, it held the safe with the documents that told the truth about my life: deeds, bank statements, investment contracts, corporate records for Harper Holdings. I opened the safe and laid everything out on the desk in neat rows. Time to stop hiding. My phone rang. Walter. I heard the dinner went exactly as expected, he said. Better than expected, I replied. They insulted everything about my background and then tried to hand me $50,000 to vanish. Malcolm sat there and let it happen. Then we proceed, Walter said. I will file the petition Monday morning. Given the evidence and the way you have kept your finances separate, this should be straightforward. He has no legal claim to your assets. He is going to say I deceived him by hiding my wealth, I said. Walter chuckled. Hiding is not the same as fraud. You earned that money before the marriage and never commingled it. You are fine. After I hung up, I called Elaine. The special board meeting is set for Friday, she said. Leon is already agitated. He tried to get Harper Holdings on a call 3 times this week. We ignored all of them. Agenda? I asked. Leadership oversight and long-term strategy, she replied. You wanted your identity reveal at the end. Change that, I said. We are moving it to the beginning. Elaine was quiet for a moment. Something happened. Everything happened, I answered. They tried to buy me off like I was disposable. It is time they find out who they were talking to. That afternoon, I began to pack. Not everything, just enough to leave quickly. Clothes, personal files, sentimental things of Claudia's. I planned to come back with movers later. A week earlier, I had signed a lease on a high-rise apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river. I paid 6 months in advance in my own name. I was folding a silk blouse into a box when I heard the front door open. Ariana? Malcolm called. I did not respond. A moment later, he appeared in the doorway and froze at the sight of the open boxes and the expensive clothes he had never seen. What are you doing? He asked. Packing, I said, not looking up. Where did those clothes come from? He demanded. I have never seen any of this before. That is because I did not wear them around you, I answered. He stepped into the room like he had stepped into a stranger's life. We need to talk about last night, Malcolm said. No, I replied. We really do not. My parents were out of line, he said. The money, the way they talked to you. You are not sorry for what they did, I interrupted. You are sorry it blew up in your face. I was angry, he said. You sat there with that bank balance like it was a joke. You knew what we were struggling with, and you lied about who you are. I closed the box and turned to face him. You were angry? I asked. You, who have been sleeping with a coworker for 6 months. You, who used your parents' credit card to pay for hotels. You, who watched them insult my mother, my education, my clothes, and said nothing? You were angry. He opened his mouth and closed it again. You have money, he said finally. Real money. How much? More than you will ever see, I said evenly. And none of it will belong to you. We are married, he protested. Marital property. My attorney has already explained how this works, I cut in. Everything I earned before the marriage is separate property. Every account is in my name alone. We have no joint investments. You are entitled to none of it. His face went pale. You already talked to an attorney? Did you think I walked into that dinner unprepared? I asked. I knew exactly what your parents planned to do. I knew exactly what you would do. I have been ready for this for months. He sat down hard on the edge of the bed. When did you find out about Serena? June, I said. The first Thursday you came home smelling like hotel soap. Why did you not say anything? He asked, raking a hand through his hair. Because I wanted to see how long you would lie, I answered. I wanted evidence. And I wanted to see what you would do when your parents decided I was not good enough for you. You failed every test. He stared at the floor. I love you, he said weakly. I shook my head. No, Malcolm. You love the idea of me. You love telling people you married for real love instead of money. But when the shine wore off and your parents' opinions mattered more, you chose someone who fit their world. That is not love. What about the house? He blurted suddenly. We cannot both afford separate places. We will have to sell it. You will have to move, I said. I bought this house 3 years ago. It is in my name alone. We have never paid rent. The monthly rent you transferred to me went into an account I control. I will return your portion minus utilities and maintenance. After that, you are on your own. He stared at me as if seeing a stranger. So I have been living in your house this entire time. Yes, I said. And tonight I will sleep here for the last time. Tomorrow, I suggest you call your parents about their guest room. You planned this, he said slowly. You set me up. No, I replied. I protected myself. You set yourself up when you decided cheating was easier than honesty. I just refused to let your choices ruin my life. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, as if waiting for me to change my mind. When I turned back to the boxes, he finally walked away. An hour later, I heard the front door close. The house was silent. For the first time since we married, it actually felt like mine. Over the next few days, the divorce process moved quickly. On Monday, Walter filed the papers. By Tuesday afternoon, Malcolm had been served at his office. By Wednesday, I had 14 missed calls from members of the Price family. I ignored them. Instead, I focused on the upcoming board meeting. Elaine came to my temporary downtown apartment with her laptop and a stack of folders. We spread charts and graphs across my dining table. Numbers told a story that could not be argued away with charm or anger. "We start here," Elaine said, pointing to a slide showing Price Innovations' financial trajectory. 3 years ago, they were months from breaching loan covenants. After your investment and guidance, profits returned, and the stock price climbed 62%. Another slide showed every major decision Leon had made. Green markers indicated choices made in agreement with Harper Holdings. Red markers showed decisions Leon made against my advice. The pattern was blindingly obvious. Green meant profit, red meant problems. The board did not need my personal history to understand why I wanted stronger oversight. The data alone was damning. On Thursday afternoon, I received an email from a woman named Rachel Gaines. "You do not know me," she wrote, "but I used to work at Price Innovations. I left because of Leon's ego and the atmosphere he created. I heard rumors that you might be the anonymous investor. I do not know if that is true, but if you have power there, I hope you will use it. I have documents that might help." I forwarded the email to Walter. He called immediately. "This could be useful," he said. "Do not confirm anything about your identity in writing. If you meet her, do it in a public place and keep the conversation focused on her experience." I met Rachel the next day at a quiet coffee shop in a neighborhood far from the financial district. She was in her mid-30s and wore a forest green blazer with worn-in flats. She carried a leather folder that looked heavy. "Thank you for seeing me," she said as we Saturday. "I know this is unusual." "Tell me why you reached out," I said. "I heard your name around the same time I heard that Malcolm Price's wife had filed for divorce," she said. I remembered Claudia Walker from my early career. A lot of advisors admired her. When I saw your last name, something clicked. I started connecting the dots. The anonymous investor, the turnaround, your divorce. It is not hard to guess if you know where to look. "What do you want, Rachel?" I asked. She slid the folder toward me. "Leon alters reports before they reach the board," she said. "He takes credit for ideas he did not have. He inflates the projections on his own pet projects and downplays risks. I documented everything I could while I worked there. If you are going into a fight with him, you should know exactly what he has done." I opened the folder. Inside were copies of emails, original reports, and the versions that went to the board with Leon's edits. "Why give this to me?" I asked. "Because I am tired of watching talented employees suffer under his ego," she said quietly. "Because I know whoever Harper is has been good for that company. And because women like us do better when we stand on the same side." Friday morning, I dressed with intention. I chose a deep maroon suit that fit perfectly, a pair of understated heels, and the diamond studs Claudia had left me. My hair was smoothed back, my makeup precise. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who understood money, risk, and power. Elaine met me in the lobby of Price Innovations' downtown headquarters. The glass exterior reflected the sky. Inside, displays of their software lined the walls, as if branding alone could erase years of poor decisions. The main conference room on the 10th floor was large enough to seat 20 people around a long, polished table. At one end, a huge screen waited for the presentation. I had seen that room many times through a distorted camera feed. It felt surreal to sit at the actual table. Board members filtered in. Raymond Ellis, the oldest, offered Elaine a courteous nod. Monica Hall, a sharp-eyed executive who also served as chief financial officer of another firm, took a seat near the center. Brian Jacobs, a venture capitalist known for backing bold tech plays, settled near the far end. Several other directors followed. Leon walked in last with the company's own chief financial officer, Gregory Shaw, at his shoulder. He stopped cold when he saw me sitting at the table. "Who is this?" he demanded. "This is a closed board meeting." I stood. "My name is Ariana Walker," I said. "You know me as Harper." The room froze. For a moment, all I heard was the soft whir of the air conditioning. Raymond's eyebrows rose. Monica's eyes widened. Brian's expression shifted from irritation to sharp interest. Leon's face went from confusion to disbelief. "That is impossible," Leon said. "Harper Holdings is a company. A committee. Not one person. Harper Holdings is a holding company," I said calmly. "Behind it is me, my attorney, and my accountant. I am the sole investor. 3 years ago, when this company was weeks from serious trouble, I offered $10 million and my expertise. Today, I am here in person to discuss how we make sure that investment continues to grow. And you are my son's wife, Leon said, his voice shaking. This is revenge. This entire meeting is revenge for personal issues. Actually, I am Malcolm's soon-to-be ex-wife, I replied. And this meeting was planned months ago, long before our marriage fell apart. My concerns are strictly about leadership, not about your family drama. Your family drama just made certain things very clear. Raymond cleared his throat. Leon, sit down, he said. We have accepted Harper's advice for 3 years. The results speak for themselves. Whether Harper is a committee or a person does not change that. Leon sat, though his jaw was clenched so tightly I could see the muscle jump. Elaine moved to the screen and loaded our presentation. Let us begin, I said. 3 years ago, Price Innovations was losing money steadily. Cash reserves were shrinking. Loan covenants were at risk. Traditional lenders were wary. Harper Holdings invested $10 million on the condition that we could advise on major strategic decisions. This is what happened next. The first slide showed 3 lines on a chart: revenue, expenses, and profit over 5 years. Before my investment, the profit line dipped further into red each quarter. After, it climbed into black and stayed there. In year 1, I continued, we renegotiated several unfavorable contracts and halted 2 failing projects. Profit rose 30%. In year 2, we shifted focus to core products and landed 3 new hospital clients. The stock price increased 42%. This year, you are on track to double your profit from the year before my investment. Brian leaned forward, studying the numbers. We all know that story, he said. What we want to understand is how much of that is you and how much is Leon. That is precisely what this next slide shows, I answered. Elaine advanced to a timeline covered in color-coded markers. Each green marker represents a decision made in line with Harper's recommendations, I explained. Each red marker represents a decision where Leon insisted on his own path despite our objections. Blue represents collaborative decisions. Under each color was a brief notation. Renegotiate Westbrook contract, green, result, improved margins. Launch Orion product without adequate testing, red, result. Recall costs $4 million. Pilot expansion into mountain region, blue, result. Steady growth with manageable risk. Here, I said, pointing to one particularly bright red marker, is the proposed contract with Horizon Valley Health Network. Leon wanted to commit to a $15 million package. Our research showed Horizon Valley was deeply in debt and likely to default. Harper Holdings recommended against it. The board sided with us. 6 months later, Horizon Valley declared bankruptcy. If we had signed, we would have lost millions in unpaid invoices and support costs. Elaine clicked forward. Another red marker showed an attempted expansion into 4 new markets simultaneously. We had argued for a single pilot region in Colorado instead. We opened 1 office in Denver, I said. We encountered regulatory and cultural issues, learned from them, and adjusted. If we had opened 4 offices at once, the failure would have been multiplied. Slide after slide, the pattern held. The green markers, backed by data and caution, led to profits. The red ones almost always led to losses or close calls. The conclusion is not that Leon is incompetent, I said evenly. He is excellent at technology and product vision. The conclusion is that when strategy and pride conflict, the company suffers. Leon surged to his feet. This is character assassination, he snapped. You are cherry-picking failures to make me look bad. You are manipulating the board. These are every major strategic decision in 3 years, Elaine said, her voice steady. The full list is in each of your folders. Nothing has been omitted. Leon turned to the board members. You are going to let her come in here and strip me of authority in my own company? After everything I built, Raymond folded his hands. No one is trying to erase what you built, he said. We are trying to keep it standing. So what exactly are you proposing? Brian asked, looking at me. I nodded to Elaine, who brought up the next slide. Leadership Oversight Proposal. I am proposing that Leon remain Chief Executive Officer, I said. But major strategic decisions above a certain dollar amount must be approved by the board. Large financial commitments must be reviewed by an investment committee, which I will chair alongside 2 independent members. Performance targets will be evaluated quarterly. Leon stared at the screen like it was a personal insult. You want to put me on a leash, he said. I want to protect my investment and the jobs of everyone who works here, I replied. We have seen what happens when any one person's ego goes unchecked. This structure prevents that, yours or anyone else's. And if I say no? Leon asked. I met his gaze. Then, under the terms of my preferred stock, I will introduce a motion to remove you as Chief Executive Officer, I said. Between my voting power and the board members who have seen these numbers, I am confident I have the support to pass it. The air in the room tightened. Everyone understood that I was not bluffing. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Raymond cleared his throat. We will vote, he said. Not on removing Leon, at least not yet, but on whether to adopt the oversight structure. Hands hovered as he called for those in favor. Raymond's went up first, then Monica's, then 3 more. Brian hesitated, then lifted his hand as well. Only one director voted no. The motion passes, Raymond said. The new oversight framework is adopted. Leon sagged slightly in his chair, as if something in him had finally given way. For the record, he muttered, this is not over. For the record, I replied, it is. I could have stopped there. Instead, I chose to say the thing I had carried like a stone in my chest since that dinner. 3 nights ago, I told the board, Leon and Denise invited me to dinner with Malcolm. They placed an envelope with $50,000 in cash on the table and asked me to sign divorce papers and leave quietly because I was not the right kind of wife. They thought I was poor. They thought I was an embarrassment. I felt every eye in the room on me. Leon flushed dark red. I did not call this meeting for revenge, I continued. I called it because this company deserves leadership that answers to more than pride. But I will not pretend the personal and the professional are completely separate. When people show you who they are in one area, you would be foolish to ignore it in another. No one rushed to defend Leon. No one pretended it sounded out of character. Elaine advanced to the last slide, our summary of the oversight plan and timeline for implementation. The rest of the meeting was all business, process, committees, reporting lines. When it ended, Leon walked out without a word. After the board members filtered away, Monica came over and extended her hand. That was brave, she said. And necessary. This company has been dancing around his ego for years. It is time we stopped. The numbers did the hard part, I said. I just read them out loud. Elaine and I gathered our materials and left the building. As we stepped into the street, my phone buzzed with a message from Walter. Malcolm signed the settlement. Divorce will be finalized in 30 days. No claim on your assets. They are asking for a non-disclosure agreement about family matters. Tell them I am not interested in talking about them anyway, I replied. Over the next week, the story of what had happened at Price Innovations began to leak through the city's business circles. At first it was just whispers. The anonymous investor was a woman. She was young. She was connected to the family. Then a local business reporter reached out to me with an offer I could not fully refuse. We want to focus on your investment strategy, not the soap opera, she said. After consulting Walter and Elaine, I agreed to a single interview. 2 weeks later, Financial Quarterly published a feature titled The Quiet Strategist: How Ariana Walker Rescued a Tech Firm and Built a Fortune in Silence. The article traced my path from Claudia's kitchen table to my early investments, to Harper Holdings, to Price Innovations' turnaround. The marriage and divorce got one restrained paragraph. The emphasis stayed on numbers, strategy, and philosophy. Walker represents a growing shift, the article concluded. Investors who value fundamentals over flash, control over headlines, and ethics alongside returns. My inbox exploded. Founders seeking capital, professionals seeking jobs, women asking for guidance. For the first time, the idea Claudia had planted years earlier felt real. I could build something of my own that was more than a portfolio. I formed Walker Capital Management within a month. Elaine became my chief financial officer. Rachel joined as director of technology investments. We signed a lease on a sleek office suite downtown with an open floor plan, glass-walled conference rooms, and enough space for a small team to grow. Our mandate was simple. Invest in companies that solved real problems, insisted on transparency, and were willing to accept guidance, not just money. We turned down twice as many opportunities as we approved. Word spread quickly that we were selective but fair. Not everything was about business. There were personal aftershocks, too. One afternoon, Walter called to say Denise wanted to arrange a meeting. Formal, with attorneys present, or informal over coffee, my choice. Against my first instinct, I agreed to meet her alone at a quiet restaurant in the suburbs. When she arrived, she looked older than she had at that dinner. More lines around her mouth, shadows under her eyes. She wore navy instead of jewels. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know you had every reason to refuse. Why did you want to talk?" I asked. She folded her hands around her glass of water. "To apologize," she said. "What Leon and I did at that dinner was cruel. Offering you money. Dismissing your life like it was something to be bought out. We reduced you to a stereotype in our minds, a woman from the wrong background who would be grateful for any check we put in front of her. We were wrong." "Yes," I said. "You were." She winced but did not argue. "I spent weeks replaying that night," she went on. "When I saw the article about you, I realized how much we had misjudged you. You did not destroy our family, Ariana. You held up a mirror." I listened without offering comfort. "Brandon is miserable," she said softly. "He keeps asking about you. He finally understands, I think, that he lost something he did not deserve. Leon is quieter than I have ever seen him. The oversight you put in place is working, but it hurts his pride." "I did what was best for my investment," I said. "What happened to your pride is your business." "I know," she replied. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not asking you to come back into our lives. I just needed to acknowledge face to face that we failed every decent test of character." I nodded once. "Acknowledged," I said. "We parted with polite words and nothing more. Some bridges did not need rebuilding." Walker Capital grew steadily. Within 6 months, we managed over $40 million in assets. We had invested in a healthcare software firm and a logistics company using data to improve delivery routes for small businesses. Then came the technology conference that changed everything again. It was held in a large convention center on the north side, rows of booths, stages, and banners. I attended to scout companies in artificial intelligence and automation. I did not expect to be stopped in my tracks by one speaker. His name was Dante Washington. He stepped on stage in a tailored forest green suit, carrying a small remote in one hand. The lights hit his face just right, revealing a calm focus that caught my attention before he said a word. "Good afternoon," he began. "My name is Dante, and I founded Nexus Analytics to solve a problem all of you know well: advanced technology that small businesses cannot afford to implement." His presentation was sharp and accessible. He talked about designing affordable artificial intelligence tools for small clinics and shops, not just giant corporations. He spoke clearly about ethics, data privacy, and long-term sustainability. When the session ended, people swarmed around him. I waited until the crowd thinned and then approached. "Mr. Washington," I said, extending my hand, "I am Ariana Walker from Walker Capital Management. Your presentation was excellent." He shook my hand firmly. "Thank you," he said. "Walker Capital. I have heard that name. You backed Horizon Care Systems, right?" "We did," I said. "Their patient management software impressed us." "I am not surprised," he replied. "They're doing good work. Are you looking at more investments in this space?" "Always," I said, "if the right company appears." We ended up talking far longer than I planned. He explained how Nexus Analytics had started in a tiny office with 3 engineers and a borrowed server rack. I asked about his revenue model, his current clients, and his growth projections. He answered every question directly, never overpromising, never dodging. When I asked about values, he did not hesitate. "I watched my mother work 2 jobs for years," he said. "She never had access to the kind of tools that could have made her small business easier to run. I am not interested in building products that only wealthy companies can use." That answer sounded familiar in a way that made my chest ache, as if Claudia were nodding from somewhere just out of sight. "Would you be open to a formal meeting?" I asked. "My team would like to review your financials and roadmap." "Absolutely," he said. "We have been careful about potential investors. I would feel good talking to you." We scheduled a meeting for the following week. When he and his team came to our office, Rachel grilled his lead engineer about infrastructure and scalability. Elaine dove into the numbers. I asked about hiring practices, diversity, and how they handled mistakes. The more we pushed, the more impressed I became. Nexus Analytics was not perfect, but it was honest. After 2 rounds of review, Walker Capital offered a $2 million investment for a 15% stake and a seat at their advisory table. Dante did not even pretend to play hardball. "This is exactly the kind of partnership we were hoping for," he said. "We need guidance as much as capital." Over the next several months, we worked closely together. Weekly strategy calls turned into monthly in-person check-ins. Sometimes we met in my office, sometimes in theirs, a converted warehouse on the west side filled with whiteboards and half-finished prototypes. We discussed everything: cash flow timing, hiring, product priorities. Somewhere along the way, our conversations drifted beyond business. One evening, after a long meeting about a potential contract, we walked out of the building together into the cool night air. "You seem quieter than usual," he said. "Rough day." "Not rough," I said. "Just full. Sometimes I think about what my mother would say if she could see all this. The firm. The board meetings. The headlines. What do you think she would say?" he asked. I smiled. "She would tell me to keep my emergency fund separate and double-check my tax strategy," I said. "Then she would tell me she was proud." Dante laughed. "She sounds like someone I would have liked to meet." On another afternoon, we ended up sharing lunch in a small cafe near his office when a storm rolled in and trapped us inside. "Dating must be complicated when you run a firm like yours," he said lightly, then hesitated. "If that is too personal, ignore it." "You are not wrong," I said. "People either see dollar signs or they think I am some kind of cold machine who only cares about numbers. I learned the hard way that hiding my finances does not necessarily protect me either." "I read that article about you," he admitted. "I tried not to, but it was everywhere. I saw how much you left out. You kept the personal stuff minimal." "That was intentional," I said. "The messy details are mine, not the world's." "For what it is worth," he said, "I am interested in you because of the way you think and the way you move through the world, not because of your balance sheet." I looked at him, trying to read his expression. "You do realize," I said carefully, "that every man who has ever wanted something from me has said a version of that sentence." "Then do not believe the sentence," he replied. "Watch the behavior. Watch what I ask for. Watch what I do when you say no." His answer settled somewhere deep inside me. I had spent years watching numbers. Maybe it was time to watch actions with the same discipline. Months passed. Nexus Analytics landed a major contract with a regional hospital chain, tripling their projected revenue. They invited my team to a small celebration at their office. After the champagne toast, Dante pulled me aside to the quiet hallway near the server room. "Can I ask you something?" he said, nerves flickering behind his eyes. "You just did," I replied. He exhaled a quick laugh. "May I ask you something else?" "Go ahead," I said. "Would you have dinner with me?" he asked. "Not a working dinner. Not a, let us discuss the next quarter kind of thing. Just dinner. Me and you." I knew exactly what he was asking, and all the parts of myself that had been cut open by Malcolm's betrayal tensed at once. But I also thought about every late-night conversation, every time Dante had listened more than he spoke, every time he respected my boundaries without being told twice. "Yes," I said finally. "I would like that." Our first date was at a small restaurant tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore. No white tablecloths, no crystal chandeliers. Just warm lighting, good food, and a quiet corner booth. We talked for hours. We traded stories about childhood. His mother running a small catering business while working nights at a hotel, Claudia teaching me interest rates before I understood fractions. He asked about the nonprofit I had built and why I still cared so much about it. I asked why he chose to focus on small clients instead of chasing the biggest possible contract. "Because small clients are where most of the real work happens," he said. "They are the ones who get left out when technology advances." Halfway through dessert, he set his fork down. "I want to be clear about something," he said. "I know you have been hurt. I am not asking for anything from you except time and honesty. If you decide this is only friendship, I will accept that. If you decide you want more, I will be here." "That is a very calm way of saying you like me," I said, smiling a little. "I like you a lot," he corrected. "But I am not in a rush to prove it. I would rather show you consistently than declare it dramatically and then disappear." Consistency. It was such an unglamorous word. It was also exactly what I craved. We kept things deliberate. We did not rush to define our relationship. We just kept showing up, for meetings, for dinners, for long walks along the riverfront when the weather allowed. Every time he asked about my work, it was because he wanted to understand, not because he wanted access. 1 year after the board meeting that had ended my marriage and publicly tied my name to Price Innovations, I stood in the corner office of Walker Capital, looking out at the city spread beneath me. We now managed over $100 million in assets. We had backed 15 companies, created hundreds of jobs, and turned down countless deals that did not fit our ethics. Price Innovations, under the new oversight structure, and with Monica as its chief financial officer and de facto stabilizing force, had just announced a record-breaking contract with a national healthcare system. My phone buzzed. A message from Monica. We closed it. Stock hit an all-time high. The board asked me to thank you again for forcing the oversight vote. I typed back, you did the work. I just held the line when it mattered. Another message came in, this one from Dante. Dinner tonight? I have something important to ask. I stared at the text for a moment, feeling a familiar flutter of nerves, but it was different now. There was no fear of what I might discover in his search history, no dread of what he might be hiding. We had built something slowly, on purpose, with all the lights on. I caught my reflection in the office window. I saw Claudia's cheekbones, her determined chin, her eyes that never backed away from hard truths. I thought about the girl I had been, counting coins in a jar while my mother explained interest. I thought about the woman sitting in that restaurant with an envelope of cash in front of her and a man who believed she was no one. I thought about the boardroom where I finally stopped pretending to be small. I picked up my phone and texted Dante back. Yes, I wrote. I will be there. I turned away from the window and walked through the open office where my team was finishing the day. Rachel on a call with a founder, Elaine reviewing a spreadsheet, junior analysts comparing notes. This was the life I had built, not the one anyone else had tried to design for me. A firm that cared about profit and principles. A reputation built on quiet results rather than noise. A future in which I no longer hid who I was to protect anyone's comfort. I slipped my bag over my shoulder and headed for the elevator. Somewhere across town, Leon was learning to work within the boundaries he should have had years earlier. Malcolm was learning what it meant to lose something you assumed would always be waiting. Denise was learning that apologies, however sincere, did not always rebuild what arrogance destroyed. Those were their lessons to carry. Mine was simpler and heavier. I would never again shrink myself for someone who valued appearance over truth. As the elevator doors closed, I exhaled slowly and let the day's tension fade. Claudia's voice seemed to echo in the back of my mind, steady and sure. Money is a tool, not an identity. Use it well. Protect yourself. Choose wisely who you trust. Standing there between floors, halfway between the life I had fought to change and the evening waiting ahead, I realized I had finally done exactly that. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.